When looking at the methods of persuasion, let's take a look at the phases of credibility. There are 3 types of credibility. First, we have initial credibility. And initial credibility is the credibility of the speaker before he or she starts to deliver their speech. Derived credibility is the credibility formed from the time the speaker starts his or her speech to the time the speech is completed. Now, the audience will scrutinize the speaker's message, strength of evidence and support, emotional appeals, organization, audience adaptation, quality of research, catchiness of the introduction and conclusion, and the fluidity of the speaker's delivery. And finally, there is terminal credibility. And terminal credibility occurs after the speech is complete and the entire presentation is marinating with the audience. Creating a common ground with your audience is essential in a speech to persuade setting. If you're able to identify with your listeners, then your listeners will be more inclined to listen to your message. By stressing the common understanding of the predicament, the speaker will hit it off with the audience. And once the commonality is established, it is easier to move into more controversial points of your persuasive speech. Delivery has a major impact on persuasion. Using vocal variety surely adds value to your persuasiveness, as opposed to a monotonous tone of voice. Now, the kiss of death in poor delivery is the speaker who consistently loses his or her place, hesitates, and masters the vocalized pauses such as your audience will discredit you in a heartbeat. When you diligently practice your delivery, you will then be able to speak with conviction. The supporting materials in your speech, such as the examples, statistics, and testimony, will be your tools to prove or disprove the ideas in your persuasive speech. When analyzing your supporting materials during the research phase of your presentation, you must continuously ask yourself, do these examples, statistics, and testimony support my specific purpose? Tapping into the emotions of the audience, such as feelings of sadness, happiness, anger, or sympathy, will likely move the audience towards a specific course of action or change a position or point of view. A way to generate the necessary emotional appeal is through your voice of language in your speech. However, using too many emotionally charged words in a short span of time can put off many listeners or weaken your message, so use them sparingly. The underlying purpose of emotional appeals is to complement your evidence and reasoning and not use emotional appeals as a substitute for persuasion. Evoking negative emotions in a speech to persuade may be an effective strategy to use to support your idea. Instilling fear in your presentation communicates a threat to the well-being of your audience. Anger is a strong feeling of displeasure, irritation, or hostility. Sadness is an emotion moved by unhappiness or grief. Guilt is a cognitive or emotional experience that occurs when a person realizes or believes, accurately or not, that he or she has compromised his or her own standards of conduct or has violated a moral standard and bears significant responsibility for that violation. Shame is a feeling of guilt, regret, or sadness that you have because you know you have done something wrong. We also have positive emotions that we could tap into. A sympathetic audience has an emotional connection to you, the speaker, and are easiest to persuade. Stirring positive emotions are the feelings that people enjoy experiencing. Happiness or joy is the emotion of great pleasure or happiness caused by something good or rewarding. Pride is a high opinion of one's own dignity, importance, value, or superiority. Relief is the alleviation, ease, or liberation through the removal of pain, distress, or oppression. Hope is the impression that what is wanted can be hard or that events will turn out for the best. Compassion is the feeling of self-sacrificing concern for the distress of another. Reasoning may be defined as the process of drawing a conclusion on the basis of evidence. It is your responsibility to walk your audience through your thoughts which led to the desired conclusion or outcome of your persuasive speech. When reasoning from a specific instance, you take a few particular instances and then make a general conclusion based on those specific instances. So reasoning from a specific instance to general conclusions is also known as inductive reasoning. Gaining a strong grasp of representative samples is challenging since it forces the speaker to make a hypothesis about the distinctiveness that might be most significant to the generalization. Reasoning from principle progresses from the general to the specific, just the opposite from reasoning from the specific instance. Reasoning from the principle is also known as deductive reasoning. Causal reasoning is when the speaker attempts to create a relationship between the causes and effects of a given situation. There are two common errors to avoid when using causal reasoning. The first is the fallacy of false cause, which is often referred to its Latin name post hoc or ergo propter hoc, which translates as after this, therefore because of this. In other words, the fact that one episode happens after another does not mean that the first episode is the sole cause of the second episode. The second error to avoid in causal reasoning is assuming that events have only one singular cause. An ordinary approach to causal reasoning is to assign an event to a single remote cause, yet the majority of the events have numerous causes. The responsible advocate qualifies his or her statements and admits that there is not a single or exclusive cause to the complex problem. Analogical reasoning examines whether the two instances being compared are fundamentally the same. Now, if the two instances are fundamentally the same, then analogy is valid. On the other hand, if the two instances are not fundamentally the same, the analogy is invalid. Your analogical reasoning will gain traction and be more persuasive the more clear-cut the analogy is to the comparable situation. A fallacy is an error in reasoning or evidence. Fallacies often occur when the speaker states unconnected conclusions, applies flawed reasoning, presents poor evidence, or succumbs to personal attacks. The red herring fallacy brings up an unrelated issue simply to divert attention from the argument or point that is being discussed. Oftentimes, using the red herring fallacy, a persuasive speech is an attempt to throw an audience off target with an emotional matter that prevents the heart of the issue to be analyzed by the audience. The ad hominem fallacy refers to the fallacy of attacking the person rather than taking up the real issue in the debate. In political elections, the integrity and character of a candidate is often addressed regardless of the issues being discussed. The bandwagon fallacy assumes that because something is popular, it must be good, appropriate, or advantageous. A speaker who commits the slippery slope fallacy suggests that taking a first step will lead to a second step and so on, all the way down the slope. The either-or fallacy argues that there are only two alternatives when many alternatives actually exist. For example, you either love Johnny or you hate him. There's no in between. The fallacy of hasty generalization occurs when a generalization of a claim is made based on too little evidence. Guilt by association occurs when we judge a program, a proposal, or a person exclusively on their association with other programs, proposals, or persons. Fallacies generate conclusions that do not flow rationally from evidence presented. Fallacies are merely a way to divert attention from the real issue at hand.